Welcome to Dating History, where every episode we take a historical male figure and break down his personality, background, and relationship patterns and ask, who would he be in the modern dating scene? And would we put up with his shit in 2025? I'm Katie Massey.
And I'm Annalisa Burns. This week we are going over Mr. Jack Kennedy, political heartthrob, Nepo baby, American royalty, arguably, and the 35th president of the United States.
And also the youngest president to ever be elected. Not the youngest president ever, but the youngest to be elected.
To be elected, yeah.
Yeah. Something that we've alluded to in past episodes is that I've been reading a lot about these guys. And this week, the book that I read for this episode was the first of what will end up being a 3-part volume on JFK by Frederick Logewall called Coming of Age in the American Century, 1917 to 1956. So I know a lot about this guy at boarding school. Mm-hmm. And the rest I listened to podcasts and read articles about. But him at 15, I've got on lock.
And to prepare for this podcast, I looked at pictures of him and I was like, damn, he was the hottest president by far. Damn.
So we both did our research.
Bring back hot presidents. What the hell happened to that?
That is like the TLDR of this episode is bring back hot, charismatic politicians.
Everybody in charge of our country looks like if a Q-tip got electrocuted.
He was born May 29th, 1917 in Brookline, Massachusetts.
Gemini? Mm-hmm. Gemini. You're a Gemini. And you're from Massachusetts.
That's true.
What does that mean?
It means that those are really charismatic people. I'm not sure if it's my Massachusetts roots. I feel like a defensiveness over the Kennedy family because it's true that they were incredibly wealthy, but and that they were complicated public figures, but they are put under such scrutiny and already so talked about that I'm kind of like, when it comes to criticizing them, I find that I'm like, my Massachusetts brethren.
And may I say, he did a really good job at being a Nepo baby.
So true.
He took it and ran. He took it and he deserved it. He earned it. He wasn't handed anything. He was born.
Well,
JFK was born to be the president.
Yeah.
As much as Christoph Waltz was born to play a villain.
Yeah, totally.
He was born to be the president.
Do you want to explain his Nepo baby, where he got his Nepo baby status from?
No, you continue to explain that.
Okay. His maternal grandfather was named Honey Fitz and was the mayor of Boston at one point. Fun name.
I knew that.
Yeah. And also at one point was a congressman. And then his dad became a major player in Massachusetts because he was so wealthy and ended up becoming the ambassador to England during World War II in FDR's administration. So there was a lot of curiosity about the Kennedy kids just because they were the ambassador's children and just because they were known.
They were socialites.
Yeah, they were being paid attention to from a very young age. In talking about his family, there were 9 of them, 9 Kennedys of that brood. Jack Kennedy is the second. So the lineup is Joe, John, Rosemary, Kathleen, Eunice, Patricia, Robert, Jean, and Edward. But for now, what's important to note is that he is the second. He has an older brother. And in a very typical older-younger brother dynamic, his older brother is like the perfect guy, good student, and who agrees with his dad on everything political. And Jack is super charming and hot. And maybe not quite as good of a student or as detail oriented. So it was assumed by everybody that his older brother would one day be president, which, by the way, how crazy to be like 18 and have everybody be like, well, one day he's going to be president. It was a very paid attention to family. His dad is Joe Kennedy. His mother was Rose Kennedy. Joe Kennedy was very involved, very social. That was both his strength and his weakness, is that he was very social. And Rose Kennedy was a little bit of a chilly mother, by all accounts. JFK struggled a lot with health issues starting from a very young age. Yeah. And he was often put up in his boarding school's infirmary. And his mom never once came to visit him at school. So that just gives you a little bit of a sense of like she cared about her kids, but from afar, and she was super Catholic, soups Catholic.
Right.
Right.
And so he was Catholic, and he was the first Catholic president of the United States. And that was one of the main things that this country had an issue with. A lot of people were questioning whether or not he was too young, whether or not he had enough experience, and his Catholicism. What do you think of the fact that he was Catholic? And
I think he was kind of like I think it's interesting how religion gets played into as a part of our brands, separate from it being our actual truth. And in the case of like Jack Kennedy was Catholic because his parents were Catholic, and that was the decision that was made for him. He didn't come about it in his own way, and he ran as a Catholic president, and he had a lot of Catholic support. He was also, as we'll get into, like a famous adulterer, and was not particularly Catholic in any way that he was living his life. And so I think it's interesting the way in which it was used as a branding mechanism for him as a candidate, without it necessarily being like automatically true to who he was.
On Hinge, there's a feature where you could put your religion, and I think if a guy puts Catholic or Christian or Buddhist or whatever religion he is, it's way less of a red flag than putting like atheist. Because to me, when somebody puts atheist, all it means is, oh, I am 100% sure about something that nobody knows for sure. I am 100% sure that everybody is wrong and I'm right. If a guy puts atheist on his Hinge profile, he's just a nihilist. It's Woody Allen catfishing you. Don't fall for it. When somebody puts their religion, it's just like, okay, he has hobbies. He has a friend, or like he has friends, he has family involved. That's his thing on Sundays. You know, every guy has his thing he's got to do on Sundays. Dungeons and Dragons, fantasy basketball, church, whatever it is.
So it's not a red flag to you?
I don't think it's as much of a red flag as atheism. It's something to consider, and it depends how much it dominates his life. But no, I don't think it should be. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think it has to be a red flag at all. I also think, you know, we're speaking coming from Los Angeles where people are weird about this. I think there's a lot of people who, if you didn't have anything religious, it would be considered strange or weird.
We're speaking from a bubble.
Right, 100%. I become wary when it's used as a sign of being a part of an in-group and not an actual sign of morality. Like, I think somebody having a real relationship with faith and with God and what that means to them can only be a turn on, because it's like they're really thinking deeply about why we're here and their own humanity and all of these big questions. It can only be a plus. It's when somebody says it and what they mean is, I'm part of this group, my family's part of this group, it's really important to me that you're also a part of this group, you won't fit in with our culture if you're not a part of this group. That's where I start to become not necessarily even against, but just wary of it, because if that is how it's being used as a shorthand for your cultural community and not for your actual relationship. And I think it often is. It's like what they're really saying by that is like, you know, where in the country you're from, what it looks like on Sundays, how you're going to dress, who you're voting for. Like often Christian is used to mean you're Republican, which is bananas, by the way, because the entire Republican platform goes against basic tenets of Christianity. But that's another platform. That it's a deep irony. It's completely insane. I think one of the sad things is that some of that doubt about religion comes from a really well-founded place, because these principles have been so weaponized.
Oh yeah.
Particularly, and I'm talking about within Christianity. I do think it's really interesting though about how our country is, because you were saying like people were nervous that he was too inexperienced or whatever. And it's like, why are we so much more afraid of inexperience than we are of dementia? You know what I mean? Like, why are we like, oh my God, he might not have enough experience. Let's take the people who have active Alzheimer's and put them on the platform and get them to make the decisions. Like, why aren't we more scared of that?
Why are we worried about experience, not enough experience, when we are okay with presidents who have experience in the wrong things.
Right. Or people who don't have any experience but are just old.
I think one of the main reasons he was elected president is because of the media and the emergence of media at the time. In the 60s, when he started to like talk on radio shows and he had a public appearance and there was video, I think it was very clear that he was incredibly charming and smart and handsome, and that was huge for his platform. That was huge. Like, he was the perfect image of a president,
right?
And people kind of fell in love with him. The public did.
He also took very seriously having a voter base of largely women, which I think is something we could talk about for a long time, about how men who take women seriously get rewarded, because women are a very large voting base, they're a large consumer base, and when you don't talk down to them as a voting bloc, they would show up for you. And he talked about that. But he also, as you're saying, he was really good on television. Imagine a world where being good in a debate meant you got elected president. Imagine that. Imagine people paying attention to a debate and that being what they decided based on. Just to get through some of his early biography a little bit, he went to Choate, which is a boarding school in New England.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, Choate.
That doesn't sound like anything weird at all.
Right, no, definitely not.
That's a normal name.
Definitely
for
not setting yourself up to be bullied by going there.
Who named that school? Who named that school? Was that someone's last name? That's worse. That's worse.
I'll check on because then not only did that person get bullied, but then they ensured that every single student who went there also got bullied for that name.
Okay, we have John Marshall High, we have John Adams High, and we have Choate. We have Choate, where all the bad boys go.
And you know what's crazy is like Choate is up and running today.
Choate, class
There's
of 20.
Choters.
Choate, class of 2017.
Anyway,
It's not funny.
He ended up going to Harvard. He wrote a thesis there about England during World War II. This is during World War II. And the thesis of his thesis was that he said that England should have confronted Hitler earlier. Mind you, this is like while World War II is going. Right. And then it ended up being published and it became kind of a bestseller because it was about what was happening right then. And so people were excited to read something. Also, because in order to research this thesis, his dad is the current ambassador to England, and he's writing about England's international policies. And he was using his dad's political contacts to ask them for primary sources.
Incredibly intelligent use of his
Nepo
assets.
baby, yeah. The thing that pisses me off problematically the most about JFK is that it was commented on that there were spelling errors and syntax errors in his thesis, and he was given magna cum laude by one professor and cum laude by another with a thesis with like spelling problems. And in talking about that thesis, they're like, yeah, he does have some like, syntactical issues and some spelling issues, but you can tell he's got a really sharp mind. And it's like, no wonder everybody loved being at Harvard and Yale during these time periods, because the best was being looked for within them, rather than now you could definitely have a gorgeous thesis at Harvard that has no grammatical errors, and it would be like, see.
I think it's so funny that bothers you, because can you think of anybody else who also has a million typos in every text they send?
But not in your thesis.
It might. It probably does.
My point isn't even that he had typos. My point is that his professors looked at him and were like, they pushed that aside to be like, okay, but what a smart young man. The other thing is that when he was at boarding school, he wasn't a great student. This is actually really interesting. So we talked a tiny bit about how he's the second son. He had an older brother named Joe. They were close in age. He went to Choate below his older brother. And Joe Kennedy was like a really good student. He was really beloved by his professors. And Jack Kennedy knew his brother was doing well in that regard and kind of was like, all right, I'm not going to play the game. I'm not even going to try to compete with him academically because that's his thing. And it's not a competition. I'm not losing the competition if I don't compete in it. And so he was super charming, but he wasn't trying super hard when he was in high school. What's interesting is not only did he not want to compete with his brother, but he also had like fine grade, like fine to mediocre to average to bad grades when he was in high school. And then he got into Harvard. And that's kind of where I'm like, was he born to be president? Sure. Was he an incredibly natural, passionate, talented politician? Sure. Did he have bad grades and still get into Harvard? Absolutely. You know, like, did he get help on his thesis, even if he wrote the whole thing? He also hired secretaries to type up his thesis so that he would get it in on time. So it's like, there is a like charming rich boy / getting away with shit thing.
I would do the same thing.
While he was at Harvard, in addition to his already existing health issues, so JFK had health problems starting from a very young age. He had scarlet fever when he was a child. He had back issues his entire life. It turned out he had an autoimmune disorder called Addison's disease. And then when he was in college, he was also diagnosed with a venereal disease, which made it burn to peace. And that was not confirmed to be gonorrhea, but was gonorrhea-like. Also, when he was in boarding school, when he was a teenager, he employed a sex worker in order to lose his virginity. He and his friend went and sought out a woman of the night in order to lose their virginities. His friend, close friend Lem Billings, was actually gay, and so he went into the room and like sat there with the woman. But Jack got down to business, and that's how he lost his virginity.
That sounds like a rich kid thing.
As we said earlier, he was the second out of the 9 children. It was Joe, him, then Rosemary, then Kathleen. Joe and Jack both ended up enlisting in World War II, and Jack became a naval hero. He was a lieutenant, and his brother, who was a pilot, ended up dying in what turned out to be a completely useless mission. So he lost his older brother. His younger sister directly below him had developmental issues, and then when she was 23 was lobotomized because her dad was told that it would help. And then his younger sister Kathleen, who was known as Kick, who was really his like absolute best friend, 2 peas in a pod, sort of soulmate, which is similar to Einstein in a weird way, all these sister soulmates. But Kick, who also died in a plane crash, and all of this happened by the time he was 31. So he was, out of the 4 eldest Kennedy siblings, he is suddenly the last man standing. And he had been thinking about and flirting with with interest in politics for a long time. He wrote his thesis about it, but then that was solidified for sure when it was like just him. It's a dark start. We talked about him having these health issues. He had Addison's disease. This meant that later on, when he was president, he had a doctor, do you know what I'm about to say, who went by the nickname of, I'm not kidding, Dr. Feelgood. He was a man named Max Jacobson, and he would give him injections with a cocktail of stuff that would make him feel better. So it was like painkillers and also stimulants, and also so
he was low key a drug addict.
He was low key getting drugged up, and that's when he's featured in The Crown. It's this brief moment in one episode in which like that you see his like forearm as he's getting like shot up with drugs, and they're like, oh sorry, if I remember correctly, it was a while ago. But all of this to say, this is the last piece of important context before we start talking about his political career and what we're actually here to talk about, which is his romantic career. Because he was a lieutenant in the Navy, when he came back, he got to be like, I'm the brave vet. And they ran on that shit for his campaign. Like him being a veteran, he had a Purple Heart. They put that story everywhere, and it was true, and it did happen. He was very well liked, but still he got to come back and be like the brave war hero, and that effectively canceled out him being Mr. Nepo rich boy, because it was like, we're so grateful to him. Yes, he's very wealthy, but we're so grateful to him, you know.
Which is interesting because I don't know, I think a lot of US presidents served some time in the military, and I think it's definitely something that gives someone like a definitive image of patriotism.
I'd just like to say, I'd like to see more political candidates who like volunteer in soup kitchens and have like worked in homeless shelters. That's not to say that no one can ever have had a military past, but you're right that it becomes a kind of default way of being like, look, I care about my country. And there are a lot of ways to display patriotism that don't involve killing people.
I think going into the Navy or the Army or whatever is kind of a similar, like the older version of guys trying to put themselves through some kind of adversity in order to prove that they've been through something significant and severe. I feel like it's the modern equivalent would be guys going to Colombia to backpack for 6 months with no water. Something to prove that they have this like raw, pure physical strength and endurance. And also just like the way guys want to prove themselves. It's like an impressive thing they feel like to go and go to backpack in Bali and survive with nothing but just water. Like that's something that is, they wear it like it's like a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah. And it's for other men. The only thing,
it is just for other men. We don't give a fuck if you're not going to be hydrated for 6 months.
It's not something that's for the female gaze. War is not for the female gaze. Let's just say that.
I feel like men do a lot of things for each other's
right.
gaze.
This is like the
I don't
quote
think
that's
they
like
do anything to impress us. I think we do everything to impress men, and they do everything to impress men. Everybody's just trying to impress men.
And also it's funny because men are not easily impressed. Like the last person who's going to tell you that they're impressed are dudes. Like they don't want to seem impressed. So everyone's just trying to go for an impossible impressiveness that you're never going to hear back on, because they're never going to be like, and you know what? You crushed it. Like they're not going to hear it from each other. We're not going to hear it from them. And so everybody's just chasing a hypothetical version of it's crazy. It's bananas.
Whereas girls are like, you go girl 100% of the time.
Right.
You go girl. You did made
vocal.
such a good smoothie. Hell yeah.
Part of the reason that the Kennedy boys went to war though was specifically, and as you're talking about, was like to defend their dad's honor, that they're like, actually us Kennedy boys are tough. And also at this point, JFK had written this whole paper being like, yeah, you guys, you should really get involved in that war. You should really go get involved in that war. So when he couldn't then just be like, when it was his turn.
He had to. It's like people posting about protests on their Instagram story. Like, if you
better have been there.
You gotta go.
Yeah, you gotta go.
Otherwise, you look pretty dumb. Yeah, no. So the only thing women like about you going to war or going on a big mountaineering fancy trip is when you get back. When you come home and finally remember
who they are.
It's date night.
We can talk more about him being a politician, but I think what everybody is tuning in for is like, okay, who would JFK have been to date? And JFK is not somebody, like, when it comes to some of these men, we're digging up their love lives and we're making people talk about him.
Right.
JFK, people lead with his love life a lot of the time.
Happy birthday, Mr. President.
I would like you for my next birthday to do a recreation of that.
You got it. I got the dress.
You're going to borrow it from Kim.
I'll give her a call.
Yeah. I spoke to my dad about this, and he remembers realizing that JFK was killed. And both my parents have memories of their parents being shocked and horrified.
How old were your parents when he
my dad was like 6 or 7, and they were actually in a newsroom on a field trip. And the news guy was like, look, kids, we've got the ticker tape to announce the new news. And he points to it and he's like, look, this is how we find out the new news that's going on. And he turns and looks at it and it's like, President Kennedy was shot. And he starts saying it and then he falters and he's like, what? And that's how they all realized is that they happened to be in a news station that day. And my dad was moving, and that was his last day in the classroom. And he went around to everybody trying to be like, bye, guys, bye, nice to meet you. And all of the kids were like, what? Because Kennedy had just died. But the point I was going to make is JFK was considered a hero and a lion of a president. And a lot of this stuff about him and women came out after the fact. So while we considered it a given, it was this fall from grace to realize that he was this philanderer. And boy, was he. There are descriptions of like different women coming in and out of where he lived all the time. That was always true. If we went through every single one, this would be a very long episode. So we're going to highlight some of the major players, starting with once he'd graduated from Harvard, he fell in love with a married journalist, a Danish-American journalist named Inga Arvad. She was 4 years older than him. She was already married, and she had interviewed Hitler. And not only that, but she had sat next to Hitler at the Olympics. Super unfortunately, she wrote that you could tell from his eyes that he had a kind heart. So the FBI began to become nervous that she was a spy. It seems like she wasn't. They began to then watch her, and they knew that she was sleeping with Jack. He was madly in love with her, and she was a point of reference for much of his life. And she was also one of the first people that he ever talked about the possibility. He was around 24. She was one of the first people that he ever talked about the possibility of eventually running for president with.
So he's always been a scandalous little man.
He has never shirked something being romantically controversial. And it was interesting because he's known for being kind of pragmatic and careful as a politician in a lot of ways. Like, he made these judgment calls with a lot of thought, and then when it came to his love life, if you can even call it that, he just threw all of that out of the window
because he kept getting away with it.
Yeah. And also because I think it was like a boredom thing.
Yeah, it had to have been. It had to have been one of those, he was so privileged that he must have been bored at some points in his life, and he just wanted to stimulate himself. And I don't know, hooking up
and stimulate himself, he did.
Losing his virginity the way he did, I feel like he had already done something crazy. Like, the same way porn is getting crazier because people are getting used to more insane things, he already started from a place of having pretty wild sexual experiences. So he kind of was hungry for something he could never satisfy. And that's why he was one of the most romantically scandalous political figures of all time.
And because he was thinking about being a political figure for so much of his life, like, even at 24, he knew that he couldn't marry her because she was married, first of all, older than him. Pretty sure she was not Catholic. And he already knew that she wouldn't. In order to run for office, you had to, especially to run for president, you had to have a wife. And so he knew that going into it. And I think it's really interesting the extent, and I don't have an answer for it, but I'm interested in how much we deem politicians' sex lives relevant to their performance in office. And I think it becomes relevant to the public at the point at which it becomes a risk or a major assertion on their character. So it's not really relevant if two adults were in a consensual relationship and nobody was cheating and then they broke up. Like, none of that really matters. Where it becomes a problem is when they're having so much sex that it becomes like a security risk, or when they use that, they become, susceptible to blackmail. Dating is not necessarily relevant, but when it becomes a problem with their character in a way that can have implications on national security, then it is a problem. And for a lot of these men, they showed careful judgment, and then they lost that judgment when it came to women. And part of, to your point, it's because they got away with it. Jack Kennedy knew that in order to eventually run for president and to be considered an important political figure, he was going to need to get married. And so when the one and only Jackie Bouvier entered the scene, she was 12 years younger than him. She was 23 and he was 35. And
that checks out for the time.
She's just out of Vassar. She had a column called Inquiring Camera Girl, where she basically did early versions of those like TikTok shows that are like, hey, like, what inspires you? Or like, why are you confident today? That was like her. She would ask people questions on the street.
Wait, what TikToks?
You know those TikToks around New York City where it's one person asking people, like, for example, the one that's like, hey, are you guys a couple? Can I ask you, like, how did you meet? She was doing an early version of those like woman on the street interviews, and she would ask people questions.
We have different algorithms.
Yeah, that's becoming more and more clear. Yours are, what did you say last time that it's yours? Is there like
monster trucks, alligators fighting crocodiles, stuff like that. It's
Mine
just
are like
true.
babies. And I think Jackie's a really perfect example of genuine connection. And also he was making a decision. He was like, now is the time to get married. Also, she said when she met him, so this is the quote from the book that I read, said that when she met him, she would say that she sensed immediately that he would have a profound, perhaps disturbing influence on her life. And she got the impression that he was a man who did not want to marry. She told a friend she was frightened, envisioning heartbreak for herself, but swiftly determined that such a heartbreak would be worth it.
I honestly get that, and I was like, okay, I saw that you wrote that, and I was like, okay, word, I get that. That's fair.
Relatable.
It's fair. I just think, like, after a certain point, like, he had all of these insane qualities. I think she knew exactly what she was doing before she even started dating him. She was a smart girl, maybe when she started dating him, but she knew what she was getting into. You know, she was a socialite too, and she came from a wealthy family as well.
I also think it's interesting because it came up again and again that women knew that he did not want to marry them and they dated him anyway, and they determined that it was worth it. And I think this like brings up the question of like why a lot of these women decided that it would be worth it anyway. And I think it comes down to the fact that sometimes it's tempting to do something that's not like date someone or do something that's not the right thing rather than the alternative being doing nothing. And sometimes people will get into relationships because the alternative to them is being bored.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, I know that this person, and I think sometimes we treat relationships with this like, and you need to date and know that that person, and the only reason to date is that they're going to be together forever. And it's like, what if it's to do something?
Yeah, no, exactly. She chose like a magnificent, profound life is what she was choosing. It was the life, not the man. It was both.
That's such an interesting point. Her dad also, who she was very close with, was a philanderer. And Jackie, who loved her father, also knew that he was cheating. So it's this thing of like, maybe I'll pick the familiar even though it's painful because I know the way in which it's going to be painful.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And she knows how to handle it too. The thing about charismatic people is that you want to prove it over and over again. Like, being charismatic is not just for the public or to get somewhere. It is, but it's also to prove that to yourself time and time again. That's why people do dumb shit like stand-up, to prove they're funny over and over again.
Wait, you're changing my life with this take that charisma is something
It's not
that
the
like
first time that has happened.
Renewing. It's about proving to yourself that you're charismatic.
It's about both. But
Yeah.
a big part of it is being like, this is who I am, and that makes me feel proud of my own abilities. And yeah, why else would they do it? To get somewhere, sure. But once they get there, they want to keep doing it. So he wants to keep proving he can get the hot girl. He wants to just keep chasing the attention and the love. Because, you know, he was overstimulated and he had a lot of privilege. So he was always after something more. He was a very ambitious man.
I also think in a real way he was a sex addict.
Yeah, he was a sex addict for sure.
It was all of these things, but also like he was reported as saying to somebody that he got a headache if he didn't have a lay in 3 days.
It's unbelievable that like our vibe is kind of like, yeah, he was a sex addict and he cheated like 15 times, but that's like okay to do if you're hot. That's okay if you're hot. If you're hot, that's fine.
It's more that it's like,
no.
at least if you're gonna do that, at least be hot. You know, it's not like it's okay if you're hot to do that.
Like,
but if you're gonna do all of that, you better be hot.
I will say this though. You know his alleged affair with Marilyn Monroe.
Let's get into it.
Okay, his alleged affair with Marilyn Monroe. It would make sense why he would cheat with her. It's Marilyn Monroe. You know, sex symbol, one of the most beautiful women of all time. She was a prolific figure. But I don't get why she cheated with him.
What? What do you mean?
Because he was like the president, but is that that big of a deal if you're Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, let's get into this.
If you're Marilyn Monroe, is the president even that impressive?
I mean, better the president than Arthur Miller.
God, don't even get me started on that.
Like, better the president than the guy who wrote The Crucible.
Yeah.
Might as well be the president.
Better
the hot, sexy president than the guy who's like sitting there with his little glasses being like, I'm writing about witches again. Like, fuck that guy. Anyway, he was not nicer.
Better the president than the guy who looks like taller Woody Allen.
Better the president than the baseball guy who, when you say, oh, Joe, you've never heard crowds like this, is like, yes, I have. Fuck you, Joe. He said that to her. She was like, you've never heard crowds who are yelling like this in the way that they were for her. And he was like, I have, because he was a baseball player and he was competitive with her about it. Might as well be the president instead of any of those guys. But I screw JFK. This is the Marilyn episode. Marilyn Monroe is a perfect example of how there are legends that are transferred to girls and women. That if you just woman correctly, if you're just sexy enough, if you're just hot enough, if you just buy into the image of what men want enough, then you will be protected from harm from men. If you're pretty enough, you will get attention, and if you play your cards right, then things will work out for you. Like, that is a message that is passed down. Or on the other end of that, if you are chaste enough and if you are careful enough and if you only date intentionally, then things will work out for you. This is the like Jackie Marilyn paradox. Is it not true? And boy, is it not true, because you can be the woman who was considered above and away the sexiest woman in America, a powerful movie star, and be treated like such shit by men who resent how charismatic and powerful you are.
Sounds like a total scam, if you ask me.
The other thing is, you can be Jackie and you can be a dutiful wife and a Catholic and get married in your 20s and marry a powerful politician and have children and play your cards right, and you can still get cheated on mercilessly. There's no way to do it on either end of the spectrum, and that protects you from harm against men. And these two women are presented as two sides of a coin and as being opposites. And really, it's like, because of the fact that they both loved and cared about JFK, they probably had much more in common than either of them did with him. They had more in common with each other. I was just going to say, I think that Marilyn Monroe is referenced a lot as like the affair, even though it's never actually been proven, but like, because what a sexy person to have an affair with. And that's a much hotter way of digesting JFK having affairs than to be like, oh yeah, he was having sex with his White House interns and with his secretaries, and he would fly them out places with them and leave them in hotel rooms so that then he could come and have sex with them when he wanted. It's hotter to be like, oh, but Marilyn Monroe saying happy birthday, than it is to talk about the dark side of the fact that he was having sex with young women who had a lot less power than him, who were on his staff basically to have sex with him.
No, 100%. And like I said, I do think she knew what she was getting herself into.
Jackie.
I think Jackie knew what she was getting herself into. A lot of these women who marry powerful men kind of know that they're going to cheat getting into it. And I feel like her thought was probably, at least I'll have cute kids, you know? Like, at least I'll have cute kids with this man. You know, he might cheat on me, but like, anybody can cheat on you. You never know. So it's never worth it to date an ugly guy, because he can cheat. Anybody can cheat on you. You might as well have cute kids.
This is the bargaining that goes into a lot of relationships.
I think JFK would be on Raya.
Totally.
I think he'd be on Raya the way people are who don't go on it, but like have an amazing profile. Like, you see a guy's profile on Raya,
like Drew Starkey.
Exactly. And you're like, oh, that guy's clearly a package. He's on here for no reason at all but to exist on here, and just so we know he's a real person. He hasn't opened this app since 2019. So he would have loved to be out there. He might have used Raya, actually, now that I think about it.
There are a couple people that I'm just going to sort of quickly mention. There was a 19-year-old intern. Tell me if this sounds familiar. There was a young intern in the White House. The president, on her 4th day at work, got her drunk on daiquiris and led her to the bed, and they hooked up. She was 19 and he was, say it with me, 43.
Sounds like a little bit of like a blue dress situation.
He also asked her to perform oral sex on an aide, which she did, but she stopped seeing him when she was told to take care of Ted Kennedy, his younger brother.
That's crazy. Because when he was running for president, he was I think the media had a huge role in his victory, and the media had a huge role in why the country admired him so much and why he was praised. He was so charismatic and so amazing and so charming. And I think JFK revolutionized, like, he started this shift where presidents had to be stars in one way or another. They didn't all have to be, but there was like this new standard.
I don't know, Nixon showed up.
I think there was like, well, right, but he had his scandals. I think that like after JFK, presidents kind of, for the most part, had to have some wild quality that sets them apart from the others, something that is incredibly appealing or jarring. And that's why a lot of, for a good reason or for a bad reason, I mean, we had Reagan was the president. He was literally a movie star. And then all the presidents like became these diva figures. You had to be a little bit more attractive. You had to be, or something. You had to have some star quality, whether it's not a positive, it is a positive one or not. Like after that, even in that video where George Bush was playing golf and he was like talking about the foreign conflict, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere he was like, now watch this drive, and he hit it so well and it was incredible and it was hilarious, and it's like, oh, that guy's a little bit of a movie star right now. Is that guy a movie star right now?
I will say though that Gen Z needs to get the fuck over like looking up to George Bush, because just because the person that we have in office right now is
funny,
fucking psycho.
No. Yeah, insane and disgusting and psycho.
Just because that is our current standard does not mean that George Bush was not a bad president, just to be clear.
Yeah, he was a bad president, but watch that drive, that was a good drive.
One thing that's really weird that I wanted to tell you about though is that JFK was like really into the pool.
Like swimming or billiards?
Like no, like swim, like multiple different women were brought. They're like, yeah, he kept this woman on deck so that she'd go to the pool with him.
I hope he had little goggles and little flippers.
He wanted to go skinny dipping in the pool, but he went with a lot of different women to be like, hey, let's go swimming.
I think he just had a passion for the aquatics.
Yeah, I'm like, it's literally like him being like, Mom, look what I can do. But with his different mistresses.
He definitely had goggles.
Goggles and no bathing suit.
A little swim cap. Looked crazy.
Goggles, swim cap,
no bathing suit. Full birthday suit. Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Mr. President.
There were two secretaries in particular who their main job was skinny dipping with the president.
Hell yeah, let's go. Sign me up for JFK, not any other president.
He also had an affair with a woman who allegedly was a liaison between him and a mob boss, and she would bring packages back and forth between him and the mob boss. And then a different woman who it seemed like he really fell in love with, who was his next door neighbor, who he talked to a bunch about disarmament.
Damn, bro kept it interesting.
No, this is the thing, is like, who has the time? This is how you know that his secretary was keeping that schedule tight. Mrs. Lincoln, shout out Mrs. Lincoln. She was keeping that schedule very well organized because he was able to have so many different mistresses while he was president. He was president for 2 years. So all of these mistresses are happening in 2 years. He's whipping through different women.
Do you think Jackie at one point was like, damn, okay, work?
I think she was like,
no, yeah, she was probably like,
help.
Yeah.
Wait, I want really quickly. Well, actually,
let's hear it. Let's go.
This leads us into a segment that we've been doing on our podcast because we're an official and real podcast and we have segments.
Oh yeah.
We've gotten to the segment
Real thing he said.
When talking about this quote starts with him talking about going to a Mexican whorehouse, and he uses a terminology for when you have sex with someone and also receive a blowjob from them.
Shout out Latinas. Hey.
Okay. Then he said, "What a thing of beauty my body has become with the open air, riding horses, and Mexicans."
He said that? Damn, I would have been his type too.
It's true.
I would have been his type.
His type was woman.
You know who's doing something amazing? And
Jack Schlossberg.
Jack Schlossberg is surviving the Kennedy legacy in the most epic, hilarious way. Mad respect. He's carrying on that legacy with flying colors. This guy does ballet.
No, I'm the biggest Jack Schlossberg fan.
I'm the biggest fan. I just wanted to say he is doing the maximum with his Nepo baby status. I don't think you could be a better Nepo baby than Jack Schlossberg. So
let's get into it.
We're going to do a little segment called You Know You're Dating a JFK. All right. Shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Shall we? So these might be some warning signs that you're dating somebody who has John F. Kennedy tendencies. And no, that doesn't mean he's going to be the president of the United States. That means he is probably just cheating on you. So you know you're dating a JFK if you start listening to either Fiona Apple's Fetch the Bolt Cutters or Lana Del Rey's Norman fucking Rockwell. That's when you know is getting bad, and that's why you know, that's how you know you got to be your own woman.
You know you're dating a JFK, and also you know that like things are not looking good.
No, you know things are not. It's either time to get out
or
just
for help.
Start writing music.
If you see your friends are listening to that in the little Spotify, friends are listening.
They need
call
help.
them.
So you know you're dating a JFK if he has a secret second phone for work or computer for work. But his job is freelance.
Or if he's just really, really cagey about you having his phone password, that's not good.
You know you're dating a JFK if he impulsively takes you on a romantic trip to Santa Barbara or Ojai or something fun because the whole world is Los Angeles. But forgets date night, forgets things that are planned.
You also know you're dating a JFK if you get a love letter written to you that's like, "Come and visit me. I think of you and our time together." Our time spent together means sex, obviously, but I think of you and our time spent together, but he doesn't remember your birthday. You know, like doing the most, but also not doing the least. You know you're dating a JFK if you find a hair tie that's not yours in his car.
Exactly.
I think that if you know you're dating a JFK if he winks at you in a room and you start blushing and then you realize that all of the women around you are also blushing because they also think that was for them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, wait, you know what I want to say? He was a really good sailor.
Jesus Christ.
That alone, I'm in.
I can sail a boat, but Jesus Christ.
Can you?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Name some sailing terms.
Boat. Boat, wind, ocean, mermaids, turtles.
I'm in.
We know what we're talking about here, okay?
Oh, you know you're JFK if you excuse his shitty behavior with the fact that he's doing a job that's kind of moralistic. You know, you're like, oh, he has a good person. I feel like good person jobs are so rare, and dudes in good person jobs feel rare, that I can see how it leads to excusing bad behavior, because you're like, well, no, but like, you know, he knocks on doors and he helps out, and it, you know, he like does a weekend shift at his local library. Also, he's a narcissist.
And cheating is a sport for him.
Right.
This is his sports.
There is so much that we could say about JFK. Like, truly, we're scratching the surface. There are so many insane stories. The lore within his family is crazy, as we've said, but also just like we've almost not even really touched his presidency and who he was as a president, if we'd find that hot. So,
because that's not what's important.
JFK, philanderer, by the way, can I just say, when they say that a man was complicated, cheated on his wife, when they're like, he was a complicated historical figure, fucking other ladies, that's what that means. Or it means that he killed people in a foreign country. Complicated figure, complicated president, or who made, complex decisions, means that he was bombing people.
That's what you call an Ivy League graduate who almost caused a war.
He is widely considered to be one of the best U.S. presidents, which, considering that he was president for under 3 years, is really bananas.
I think the big lesson here is we need to have more hot presidents. That is the takeaway. What happened to that?
Yeah. Even hot politicians.
Hot politicians. Presidents aren't hot anymore, and it's actually very concerning.
Also, JFK was considered one of the best presidents because he sold himself as one of the best presidents, because he was one of the best orators that we have had in American history. He had excellent speeches, and he was a strong writer. And the written word and being a good public speaker is being taken less and less seriously as a skill.
Yeah, now it's just screaming. It's whoever can talk the loudest.
Or say the thing that's the most shocking. One thing I resent about modern American politics is the infantilization of American voters in this, like, well, no, we got to say it to them like this in the simplest way because they're just not going to get it. If we say, JFK didn't do that at all. He started talking about like French tax rates in his debates. Like, he was not simplifying things just to get to the, like, he took American citizens seriously and he spoke to them like they were grown-ups, and that is not happening enough. What's our final analysis?
Would you have dated JFK? What do you think? I mean, no shit, I would have fallen for him. I think I would have fallen for the charisma. He's a cutie pie. And been like, okay, I want to have cute kids, so fuck it, we ball. What would you have done?
I think I would have been like, I think I would have been like tactical about it and been like, this is a marriage that I am in carefully, and I would have gotten STD tested often. I think I would try to like Hillary it and launch my own political career.
What was my guess for you?
You wrote, stay too long, but hold her own and act like it's fine. Get invited to state dinners and end up writing a memoir called First Girlfriend.
She would write, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. First Girlfriend. That's Katie.
Alrighty, and that is our episode on JFK. Next week, our episode is on a European artist. So take a guess who that could be in the comments.
I didn't like his art.
And let that guide you however it can.
Thought it was dumb.
Our final thought is that just because a boy is pretty and seems to have everything going for him, it does not mean that he doesn't have a really messy personal life.
Thank you for listening to Dating History. This has been the 4th episode. My name is Annalisa Burns.
And my name's Katie Massey.
Thank you for tuning in.
Bye.
Hello everybody, it's Katie here with a very congested final fact check and follow-up. Honey Fitz was the nickname for JFK's maternal grandfather. He was actually named John Francis Fitzgerald. When Katie says there were 9 of the Kennedys, she's speaking about the Kennedy children, as there were 11 in total in the family. Joe Kennedy was very wealthy, first from a career in finance and then other pursuits, including a stint in Hollywood. A fun fact about him as a producer, not as a star. A fun fact about him is he used to come say goodnight to his son's girlfriends and kiss them on the lips. His treatment of women and his notorious adultery likely affected how JFK saw women. At one point, Annalisa says JFK wasn't handed anything, and while he was a talented and skilled politician, he was handed a life of extraordinary privilege, even for the time, and his power and his connections undeniably helped him, as well as his dad's wallet in funding his campaign. Katie asserts that JFK was mostly culturally Catholic, but of course it's hard to assess the depths of one man's faith without talking to him directly. He also was intent on the separation of church and state and did not want to be seen as mixing the two. The school name of Choate comes from the Choate family and was organized by Mary Atwater Choate, the wife of Judge William Choate. And now I'm done saying Choate. We both say that JFK was considered one of the best presidents. In C-SPAN's 2021 Presidential Historian Survey, he was ranked number 8. Donald Trump was ranked 41st. The Marilyn Monroe affair has not actually been definitively proven, although Shirley MacLaine anecdotally said in her 2024 memoir that she saw JFK exiting a bedroom that Marilyn Monroe was in. It's widely assumed, but there is no concrete proof that we know of. Inga Arvad was, as we said, not Catholic, but even if she had been, her being twice married and currently married at the time of their affair surely essentially disqualified her from the possible role of First Lady anyway. And at the end of the episode, Katie says, "You know you're a JFK if," but of course meant to say, "You know you're dating a JFK if." Anyway, that's all for the fact check. Thank you again for listening or watching this podcast. This podcast was created by Annalisa Burns and Katie Massey. You can find us at Dating History on Instagram and at Dating History Podcast on TikTok. Our podcast is filmed by Alec DeLand with sound by Sam Liederman. It's produced by Rookie Media and Paige Freeman. Our biggest source for this episode was the Frederick Logoval biography, JFK, Coming of Age in the American Century, 1917 to 1956. This episode was edited and fact-checked by Katie Massey. Special thank you to the Los Angeles Public Library and the Octavia Lab. Please let us know who else you'd like to hear about in future episodes. You can send segment ideas and episode ideas to datinghistorypodcast@gmail.com. And have a good week. See you on October 8th when we cover yet another man who cheated on his wife and had sex with a minor. Bye!